Alright, we're getting into Twitch Origins stories. This time around, we're getting into my time in London, England. Basically, I'll start where I left off at the first Twitch Origins video. Basically, what had transpired was I wrote the first album between, at some point, I think it was 3 or 4 months before I left for London, England. I was working on my album, and the very first Twitch self-titled release, the cassette release, and I obviously am looking for band members or live show members for Twitch, and I was working this really fucking shitty landscaping job. And at some point in working on the album and just feeling frustrated with what was going on here in Calgary, I had a conversation with my best friend who was living overseas in London, England at the time. And he basically said, I got on the phone with him and I was telling him about my whole situation. He's like, just fuck it, just come to London. And I'm like, I don't know, man. He's like, just fucking do it. So of course, I was living with my mom and stepdad at the time, and I mentioned going to London to them, and they said, just fucking do it, just go. So basically, in that time span, I think it was like 3 or 4 months before I actually left. I obviously applied for a holiday working visa. Well, first of all, I went and got my passport, and then of course the holiday working visa, and as a part of that passport, and I can't remember how long the process was, but I think it was somewhere in between 3 or 4 months. Actually, it might have been shorter than that. I can't quite remember, but I eventually got both of those. Basically, everything kind of worked out for July, and that is when I officially released the Twitch self-titled tape cassette. And basically what I did was I made up, I think, 13 or 14 copies, maybe 12, I can't quite remember anymore, maybe it was 12 or 13, but I made up 14 copies and did all the artwork, printed them off, printed off the artwork, cut all the J cards out of the photocopied graphics, and assembled that, dubbed the tapes at a friend's place. I think it took like 8 or 9 hours, maybe 12 hours, somewhere around there, 8 to 12 hours. Made up all the tapes. Then I think I was officially done assembling everything on July 1st, and then of course I got on a plane, and I do think I arrived in London somewhere July 2nd or 3rd. Of course, July 3rd is my birthday, and I would say I officially released the album on my birthday as I officially released it on my birthday. And then of course took all those tapes, packed up all my stuff, went to London. London, I had no idea what to expect. All I knew was that at some point I was going to have to find a job, and because I didn't have a whole lot of cash. I had some cash, but not a whole hell of a lot. And basically my best friend met me at the Heathrow airport. We went down to the tube station and got these photos done in this little photo booth, and then the photo booth spit out a bunch of photos. Took those photos to the tube station attendee. He made up my tube station ID, or whatever you want to call that, and I think I purchased a week pass or something like that. I can't quite remember, but Yeah, went first day, get into London, went to my best friend's place where he was staying. It was kind of like a communal house almost. There was a bunch of people living in there. Everyone had their own separate rooms, and there was a rental fee associated with each room. Some of the rooms were more expensive, some of them were less expensive. I can't remember how much we paid to be in the one room that we were in. I think it was like 100 quid or something like that. But get to the place, drop my shit off, and my best friend's like, so do you want to go out? And I'm like, okay, fuck, sure. So we go out, and I can't remember if I slept on the plane or not. Doesn't really matter. We end up going up to the house was in Seven Sisters, I do believe. Seven Sisters? Yeah, Seven Sisters. And we went up, walked a few blocks up to this main strip there, and went into this little corner store, and of course they have alcohol anywhere and everywhere, and at the time it was still illegal to drink in public, but because so many fucking people were doing it, as long as you're not causing problems, you know, you can drink in public and stuff. So my best friend introduced me to this drink called Strongbow. It's actually called the stuff that we got is called Super Strongbow, which was tall cans. I think most of you probably know what Strongbow is. It's a cider. These are Super Strongbow. They're in tall cans. Rather than it being 6% or 5.6% or whatever it was 13%. And we got a couple of those each, and then I can't remember what we did that first night. We went out and did a bunch of stuff. It was super fun. And there's a ton of stories from this time period. The first couple of nights was just kind of getting my footing there. I had met somebody in Calgary, I think it was 3 months before or a month before they were moving to London. And of course at the time they were like, you should come with me. And I'm like, at the time I wasn't like thinking about that. And of course, London being London, and just weird shit happens all the time there. I can't remember how long it was after being in London. I think it somewhere within 3 days to a week. I'm wandering around central London, and of course I look over and there's that person, I can't remember her name, I think it was Cass or something like that. But of course I look over there and she's looking at me, she's going, what the fuck? So like, of course, you know, we start talking and stuff like that, and she invites me to this pub. I can't remember, it was a day or two later. She's like, well, meet me at this pub. It's called the Intrepid Fox. Of course, I have no idea what this pub is, or, you know, I thought it would probably be, you know, just some odd pub somewhere. And of course, the day that I meet up with her at the pub, I walk in there and I'm like, holy fuck, this is, wow. Of course, it's an alternative pub, and this is stuff that you wouldn't see in Canada at the time. This is stuff like, you know, walking into a pub and everyone's tatted up, and there's, you know, everyone is all alternative, and there's like, it's a small little room, and it's like, you know, shoulder to shoulder in there and shit, and there's some very interesting stories from that pub. I'm not sure I'll get into those in this video, but, you know, of course it's an alternative pub. There's, you know, goth and metal and punk music playing over the sound system, and, you know, I think I had a couple of Guinnesses that night. I can't remember the sequence of events. I think she invited me to an industrial show before I actually went to this venue called Slimelight. Most of you probably know what Slimelight is. It's probably one of the most famous goth industrial venues, at least in London. anyway, I won't get into that yet, but I'm pretty sure she invited me to an industrial show, and she got me a ticket and all that kind of stuff. And I can't remember how long after this pub, but anyway, I go to this venue. I think it was Underworld or something like that. And of course, this is my first industrial show ever. And fortunately for me, it was a legendary act, Spawn Ranch, and there was a couple of other acts. One of them, the first act was kind of, whatever. They were very dramatic, and yeah. The second act, I do believe, was Inertia, and then of course the final act was Spawn Ranch. My first industrial show was fucking Spawn Ranch, and I am very, very fucking glad that occurred, and that was my first industrial show. At the time, of course, I didn't know who the fuck they were, but amazing set. Yeah, it was really fucking good. But so somewhere in there, I think she invited me to go to Slimelight, and at the time, I had this book called Hex Files by Mick Mercer, the Goth Bible. I had actually purchased this in Saskatoon when I was still living in Saskatoon, and basically this book has lists of venues, stores, bands, magazines, all kinds of shit. And I wasn't sure. I thought, well, London is listed in here. This is from all over the world. London is listed in here, so I thought, I'm gonna bring this with me to London. And of course, when my friend invited me to Slimelight, I was like, oh, okay. And I knew that in order to get into Slimelight, you need to be a member. However, I do believe it's listed in this book that if you're not a member, in order to get into Slimelight, you can just basically wait outside and ask somebody to sign you in that is a member. And that's essentially what I did. And of course, this is my first time at Slimelight. And there's rows of fucking TVs on the bottom ground floor. There's rows of like TVs and shit, and there's videos playing on them, and it's a small little room, and there's a DJ up on a stage, and it was fucking, yeah, one of the best experiences I had, I think, being in this legendary club, being in a club that was listed in this, and yeah, just, it's fucking amazing. And I do believe, I think Slimelight had 2 floors. The top floor was more of the electronic and the industrial side of things, and the bottom floor was kind of more gothy, but they would have some other semi-electronic things down there that were playing, that the DJs were playing. And I think this is another time. This is further in the future, but there was one time I got into Slimelight again, and I was up on the second floor there in the industrial room, and heavy electronics. And I met this guy there, and him and I struck up a conversation, and he's like, of course, I think they were playing through Frontline Assembly, and the dude's like, well, I mean, because it came up in conversation, where are you from? And I can't remember where he was from, but of course I said I'm from Canada. It's like, oh yeah, this is Frontline Assembly. Yeah, fuck Canada. You have some amazing bands there, Skinny Puppy, Frontline Assembly, and just an interesting conversation. And the top floor was different, a little bit different. It was obviously, it was a different space, definitely interesting. I think the bar was tucked into the corner, and there was some some kind of cagey metal industrial looking stuff around the bar and stuff like that. The one thing about Slimelight though at the time was that you could bring in your own alcohol, and they would encourage you to do that because the bar was super expensive. So like if you wanted to bring in a bottle of wine, you could totally do that. They would uncork it for you and you could just fucking drink it there in the bar, and they didn't give a fuck, you know, like there were no like uncorking fees, nothing like that. They would just like open up the bottle and like, there you go. And there was a time or two when I had done that, and I think there was another time that I may have bought a drink there, but I think it was super expensive. The entire time that I was in London, I spent 4.5 months there. I think I only went to Slimelight like 2 or 3 times. There were some other interesting things that went on, like of course, you know, sometimes I would go with my best friend to Intrepid Fox, the pub I had mentioned earlier, and there was this one time I went to the Intrepid Fox, and of course I just, you know, I'm young. I think I was 21 or 22 or something like that, and of course, you know, as a Canadian in a foreign country, you know, it's very easy to get into trouble. It's very easy to do things. Striking up a conversation. I'm not really a shy person. I am very extroverted, and I think I randomly sat down at this guy's table, or he was standing at the bar, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna talk to this guy. I have this conversation with this guy. I can't remember how many times of going to the Intrepid Fox, but I started having this conversation with this guy, and we get onto the top. Oh, I did find a job in London. I will tell that story in a bit, but we got onto the conversation. This individual and I got into a conversation about jobs, and I told him, oh yeah, you know, I'm working at this arcade casino type place, doing customer service and kind of security type stuff, and he's like, well, and I'm like, so what do you do? And he's like, well, in the past I was a gigolo rigger. I'm like, at the time I had no fucking idea what that was, and I was like, gigolo rigger, like I'm thinking like construction or oil or something like this, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know, we have a little bit of conversation, and of course it wasn't until after I got back to Canada that I saw the movie Deuce Bigalow, American Gigolo, or whatever that movie's called, and I'm like, oh, that's what he's talking about. He was a pimp for gigolos. So super funny conversation with him, and it was quite some time after coming back to Canada and watching the Deuce Bigalow, American Gigolo, or whatever that movie was. Just super funny finding out at that point in time, oh, he was a pimp. But I did find a job there. I ran out of money, and I had no way of getting into central London because I didn't have enough money for a tube pass or a transit pass, whatever. And so I was like, well, I have to find a job now because I can't afford to do anything. And so I basically walked from Seven Sisters to central London, and I do believe I found a job that day. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I found a job that day, and of course it was at, I can't remember what the business was called, but it was a arcade, casino, slot machine type business. In the front end there were arcade machines, and in the back end there were casino type machines, and essentially what I was a customer service agent that would just stand around making sure nobody was, you know, getting into trouble or doing anything sketchy or whatever. And of course I would help them get coins for their exchange cash for coins so that they could play their games. And that was my one and pretty much only job that I had while I was living there. and they expanded into doing internet cafe stuff. And at the time, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot of that going on in London. Like, there were internet cafes, but it wasn't prevalent at the time. And I mean, it's not prevalent anymore. Now everybody's got internet on their phone or whatever. But they essentially, I had told them that I'm really good with computers and stuff like that, and so of course they moved me into this internet cafe position, and I was basically once again a customer service. However, a part of that was you would get these people coming in and they wouldn't know what the internet is or how to use it or anything, so I was basically teaching them how to use the internet. And there was I'm not sure where all this fits in. I can't remember the sequence of events exactly, but there was a point in time where, once again, I was going through this, and I was like, oh, let's, go to Camden, because Camden is supposed to be the alternative area of London or whatever, right? Or at least front-facing, it was the alternative area where you could get all this fucking cool clothing and shit. And then there were also other things in Camden, and I can't remember the last day I spent my last money that I had saved for this trip on a pair of snakeskin looking PVC pants. And of course, I spend the money on it, and I get on the tube, and of course I trip and I scrape the knees and blow out the ass, and of course I'm like, okay, well, and then of course after that I walked to central London a day or two later, and found my first job there, or my first and only job there. There was a record label in London called Nightbreed Records, and I, of course, being young and not knowing anything about the label, Nightbreed wasn't in Camden Stables. There was something in Camden Stables. There was a piercing shop that I went to. I went and got this pierced, this ear thing here, up in here. Bought some jewelry from that place. That was the first time I ever saw new rocks as well, because I think in that piercing shop it was kind of like this multi-piercing tattoos and clothing and shit like that. I do believe there was new rocks there. At the time, new rocks were not known in, Canada, or they weren't prevalent. I was tempted to buy a pair, but I was like, well, it's like 200 fucking pounds for new rocks, which is at the time was probably around $600 Canadian. So decided not to do that. However, got this piercing. I did get a labret piercing there as well. However, both of these piercings I got the day I was meant to leave London, actually, for back to Canada. But there was something else in Camden Stables. All kinds of clothing shop. There was something I found in Camden Stables, and I can't remember what it was. Doesn't matter. I don't remember it, so if I think of it later, I'll mention it. But of course, my friend Cass, or whatever, I can't remember her name, but I think it was Cassandra. But she, of course, I brought all my tapes with me, and I was handing out tapes to certain individuals. She, at the time, was semi-dating this record label head guy. I don't know who the fuck he was. Can't remember his name, but she was like, oh, I'll take one of your tapes and give it to him. And I'm okay. So she did that. Nothing ever came of that. I did end up visiting Nightbreed Records. I had no idea that they were primarily a goth rock label. And at the time I was young. But I was like, I was going through this, I'm like, oh, Nightbreed Records, okay. Second floor, Wollaton Street, Nottingham. Okay, I'll look this up and find it on a map and go see if I can walk in there and, you know, try to sell them on signing me. So of course I find them and I go in there and I talk to somebody in the front and they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I know an industrial band in Canada. I didn't say it was me, but I said I know an industrial band in Canada. They're called TWitCh, and they're looking to be signed. And the dude at the front was like, oh, you need to talk to this person in the back. So I go into the back and I talk with this woman and I hand her the tape and she's like, why don't you find a record label in Canada? I'm like, oh, dude. Of course, being young, I was pissed off because, you know, she didn't listen to it or anything. And I mean, what do you expect? Like, you walk into a record label and you can't expect them to listen to everything that people bring into the label or whatever. But at the time as well, being that Canada, you know, you wouldn't normally find smaller labels signing, you know, Canadian acts, even if the label's in Canada. So I walked out of that conversation quite pissed off. Of course, I took my tape with me because she handed it back to me. But that was something else that, you know, nothing came of that. And there was some really weird, interesting coincidences in London. Like, there was, you know, I'm hanging out in Piccadilly Circus or wherever the fuck it was, somewhere in central London. And there's this park there, and I'm hanging out in the park. Two things that happened. One day I was hanging out in the park, and I run into these dudes that I knew in high school from Saskatoon. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? You know, it's just really, really weird little things would happen like that. And I don't know if it's because everyone's thinking the same thing as you, like, I need to go to these places. One of them was a musician. I'm not sure if he was out there for the music scene or what he was doing, but, you know, I run into these guys, I'm like, holy fuck, like, wow, it's great seeing you guys. I haven't seen you since high school. And I can't remember if I got their numbers or not. That was something else. Obviously, I went and purchased a cell phone out there so that I could actually talk to people and have conversations, and, you know, people could call me and we could organize things and, you know, that whole thing. And I can't remember if we exchanged numbers, but there was another time in central London, you know, I'm just hanging out and these two people come up to me and I'm like, okay. And one of them asked me, you're a musician, aren't you? I'm like, yeah. And the guy's like, well, we're musicians too, and I run this record label and I have this studio, and just, why don't you come down and just check it out and just, you know, hang out and stuff. I'm like, okay. So of course, a couple days later, I go and you go to this dude's studio and knock on the door, and he answers, and in the front room there's all the music gear and his studio set up, and I can't remember what his label was called, but, you know, he knew people, he was connected to other larger labels, and it was super interesting because at the time I didn't have any synths, I didn't really have any gear with me, I didn't bring my guitar or anything with me, I just had my tapes. And I think I brought my tape, and he took a listen. He's like, you know, of course, he's like, wow, you really got something going here. And but I think it's still time to keep recording. And of course, in my head, I'm like, well, that's not what I'm looking for, and that's not what I want. But, you know, I'll hang out with this guy anyway and just see if something comes of any of this. And there was, you know, he gives me a demonstration on his gear and his studio setup, and you know, we're messing around, like, you know, I'm just playing his gear and he's recording it and stuff like that. And I only worked on one song with him, and the song was never completed, and there was only a couple times that I went back to his studio, and it just started to feel a little bit sketchy. So after the third time of being back there, I was like, no, I can't fucking do this. So I left that day and didn't go back to that dude's place. I'm sure he was connected. I mean, he invited me to this bar to, you know, hang out and check out his act and stuff, which I did. He was he seemed very professional and stuff, but just kind of a sketchy situation there, so I chose not to go back and not engage with him or any of his people that he was hanging out with and stuff. But those were really the only label things that ever happened in those early days, and but lots of fun stuff went on. I handed my tape out to other people. There was this dude that was a promoter and a manager of this band. I can't remember his name. Doesn't really matter. Handed him a tape. He took a listen. He's like, oh yeah, I can play all this guitar on this. And of course, it seemed like when I was out there that people seemed to want to keep me in this writing phase, which I was quite at the point where I wanted to move on from that and actually play live shows and stuff. And this London story is quite long, so I'll tell you some anecdotes and from some of the experiences I had. I can't remember how many tapes I ended up handing out. At any rate, I think I came back with like 2 or 3 left, and but there were some good experiences. There's that techno producer Carl Cox, my best friend and I, and the person we were staying with, the person that kind of ran the house that we were living in, she invited us to go to this Carl Cox gig, and of course my best friend and I, we have no idea who the fuck he is, but you know, we go to this gig and he's DJing, and it's like a smaller room, and of course my best friend and I are getting fucking drunk as fuck, and you know the whole freaking out like Jonathan Davis. We're doing that in this techno, Carl Cox techno set, and yeah, we were just crazy. We were crazy. Once again, there's a lot of, it's very easy to get into trouble there. There was one night that, you know, we're drunk and stuff, and I was looking at the ground, and the sidewalks there are a little bit different. They're not like poured concrete. Most of them are, you know, they're slabs of concrete or little bricks that have been laid. And there was this one piece that I was looking at, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I can lift this up and just take this with me. So we take the sidewalk piece out and we just carry it with us and take it back to the house that we're living in. And I think the next day we found it broken in the front. It's like, okay. And I do remember us going back to that spot, and it was already replaced, and you know, it was already fixed and stuff. what else can I tell you from that? There was a Halloween festival that I went to. I think it was called Black Celebration, and this was the first time I had seen, I do believe, Leech Woman, which was this like dark industrial stuff, and they had like slides that were putting up these visuals of like violent imagery and stuff like that. And the drummer guy, he had all this like metal shit, and he was banging on it and stuff, and the lead singer was playing a bass, and it was really fucking good. That same festival, I saw Covenant for the first time, the legendary Covenant. I can't remember what album they were promoting at the time. I think it was the Sequencer album or EP or whatever that is. Saw them for the first time. I saw not Cubanate, but C-Tech. I was fortunate enough to see C-Tech. That was amazing. I saw at the same festival, I saw another band called, I think it was called Chaos Engine. Chaos Theory or Chaos Engine. At any rate, they were kind of one of the first bands to kind of coin the term industrial pop. They were really fucking good too. I absolutely loved their performance, and the lead singer I found highly inspiring in my own endeavor, even though it would be several years after that I get my own synth and stuff like that. But what else did I see there? I think Das Eat was playing that festival, but I missed out on their performance because I went outside to hang out with a bunch of people. Lots of crazy shit, you know, like there's this club called the Electric Ballroom, I do believe, Electric Circus or Electric Ballroom, and it was a 3-floor venue, quite big. There was a metal floor, there was a goth industrial alternative floor, and then the top floor was like this loungy type thing, which was a small little room. Lots of wandering around, discovering things, lots of drunken nights and shenanigans. There was one night that I think my best friend and I, we drank like 8.5 cans of like super strong bow, and by the end of it we were getting on the tube. I had no idea what the fuck was going on because I was so fucking drunk. But I remember we were going down into the tube to meet our friend, and I was like, I can't fucking drink this shit anymore, it tastes like puke, and I chucked it against the wall in the tube station. And that night I think we I remember we're heading back to the house, and you know, of course I'm like, fuck, I gotta take a leak. So I'm like, I try and find a spot on our way home, and of course I take a leak, and I'm like, I'm looking around, I'm like, where the fuck are Rob and Caroline, or whatever the fuck are, Catherine, I can't remember what her name was. Where the fuck are Rob and this friend of ours? I couldn't find them. I'm like, what the fuck? And then of course I hear Shane, and of course I think her name was Caroline, but she's pushing Rob in a fucking shopping cart, and of course we're pushing it along, and I think the shopping cart falls over, and I think that's the same night that we get back to the house, and there's a bunch of people at the house, and Rob's like, I think Rob was in the backyard, and that Rob is my best friend, and I'm like sitting on the couch, I'm like, where the fuck is Rob? And Caroline's like, oh, he's out back. I'm like, okay, so I go out to the back, I'm like, of course I'm like fucked, and he's in the back, and he's trying to make himself puke because he's like got some serious, like, I don't know if it's alcohol poisoning, but he was super drunk and he just wanted to get it out of his system, so he's like trying to make himself puke in the garden. And of course after that I'm like, oh fuck, I need to go to bed. So I go to bed, and in the room that him and I were staying in, it was kind of like this front room, and there's this window there, and I go to bed and I wake up in the middle of the night, and I I'm like, "Bleh," puke all over my arm. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm not cleaning this up right now. So of course I go back to sleep, and then in the morning, I wake up to this knocking on the window. I'm like, what the fuck? So I open the curtain, and it's Rob, and he's got no socks, he's got his pants and no shirt. And I'm like, what the fuck? So of course I go and open the door. I'm like, dude, what the fuck you doing out here? And he's like, dude, I don't know, I just woke up out here. I'm like, holy fuck. So yeah, there was that night. There was another night that Caroline, Rob, and myself, we decided we were going to go to an underground rave. And of course, you know, you have to get on phones and you're calling these numbers and they're giving you locations, and once you get to this location, you have to call in, you get another number from somebody or whatever the fuck it is. And of course we're doing this thing, and eventually we get the location of the rave, but the cabbie that we got into, it takes him like 3 fucking hours to find this venue. And of course, while there's a moment where he gets out of the cab and he's calling someone because he can't find the fucking place, and Rob is sitting in the front and Caroline and I are sitting in the back, and Rob turns back to me, he's like, dude, we're gonna ditch this cabbie. I'm like, okay. So we eventually find the rave, and you know, Caroline and I get out and we start walking towards the entrance to this rave, and I look back and Rob is still in the car, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm like, I start walking back to the car, and Rob looks up and he's like, go, go. So I'm like, okay. So we start heading back to this rave, and I hear this door slam, and I look back, and Rob is like starting to run towards the rave, and the cabbie's getting out of the back of the vehicle and going to his trunk, and the first thing I'm like, dude, he's got a bat or a gun or something. So we fucking booted into this rave. I think the rave was like 5 or 10 pounds or some shit like that, but we get into the rave. The cabbie, I don't know what happened to him. I think he just took off or whatever. But we get into this rave, and Rob and I are like, okay. And while I don't encourage people to use drugs or anything like that, Rob and I had decided, okay, we're gonna do ecstasy tonight. So we, Caroline, being that she was a recovering drug addict, she knew people, so we asked her to find someone to help us find some ecstasy. And she finds someone, you know, she pulls them up, and I'm like, okay, this looks good, here's the cash. Rob and I take this ecstasy, and you know, I'm wandering around, and I'm like, I don't really feel anything, and it was just weird. Like I didn't feel lovey-dovey or whatever the fuck. It was more cerebral for me. Like it was more of just like this, like, I don't know if it was ecstasy or what the fuck it was, but of course I'm wandering around, and I see Rob there, and he's if this is Rob, there's this other guy standing over here, and Rob's like staring at the guy, and the other guy's staring at him. Like I go up to Rob, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And he's like, dude, I think I'm gonna fight this guy. So I'm like, no, dude, we don't need to do this. We're gonna go wander around for a bit. So fortunately, nothing happened in that regards, but the party was super interesting. Super interesting underground party. It was under an underpass in this like weird alcove thing, and the further you go into this alcove, the more dirtier shit you would get on you. So I tried to stay out of that area, but it was super interesting, DJs and stuff, and there was this like live MCing shit that was going on, and lots of opportunities to get into trouble there, and we did get into a lot of trouble. But one night, I can't remember what was going on. I think we were going to the Electric Ballroom or whatever it was called, and well, just before we go into the venue, we're like, okay, we're gonna get caffeine pills and we're just gonna fucking take these all night and like get fucked up on caffeine. So we go into the store, you know, get a pack of caffeine pills, a bunch of pop with extra caffeine or whatever, and a bunch of chocolate. And of course we get in line for this event at the Electric Ballroom. My buddy and I can't remember how many we popped in line. I think it was just one of these caffeine pills, and of course we're eating chocolate and drinking this caffeinated pop. And as we're standing in line, there's this guy that's just ahead of us, and I don't know if he's still a part of Cradle of Filth, but this guy was in Cradle of Filth, and I'm not going to mention his name, or maybe I will. His name is Gian. I don't know if he's still a part of Cradle of Filth, but he just came across as very egotistical, and when we were talking with him, he was answering our questions like he was answering an interview for a magazine or some shit like that. Once again, don't know if he's still a part of Cradle of Filth. No, not trying to diss anyone, but it was just odd to me, because it was like, dude, we're just humans, you know. But we eventually get into the club, and you know, my friend Cass is there. You know, we're dancing and stuff. Rob, my best friend Rob, is up on the second floor in the metal room, and of course we're wandering around and stuff and popping more of these caffeine pills. And there was, on the second floor, there's this little area where you could just like chill out and not have to dance or listen to music or whatever outside of the metal room. And I ran into this guy, and I don't know who he was, but him and I had a conversation. I'm like, yeah, dude, I think I've popped like 8.5 caffeine pills here. He's like, oh shit, dude, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I feel fine. And of course, I go check in on Rob, and he's, you know, doing his thing in the metal room or whatever. And I go downstairs again, and I'm chatting with Cass, and I tell her, yeah, I think I've taken 8.5 caffeine pills here. She's like, whoa, dude, you shouldn't be taking that much caffeine. And I'm like, okay. And eventually we go home, and I had to work the next day, so getting to sleep was important, but somehow I managed to get to sleep after 8.5 caffeine pills. My best friend Rob also took 8.5 caffeine pills throughout the night, and somehow we survived that and didn't have heart attacks, and I ended up sleeping. I go to work the next day, and I remember being at work at the internet cafe section of this arcade casino type place, and that period for me, that whole period of London, you know, there was a lot of anger and I would say almost hate that I was dealing with inside of myself. And the day that I went back to work after the night out with all the caffeine pills, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking, but I was like, fuck this, dude, I'm just gonna take more caffeine pills. And took a tablet or two or whatever the fuck it was, and I was like, I can't remember the rest of the day, but the reason why I went to London was for my music. I was there to check out the goth industrial scene. I was there to check out the music scene. And while it was fun living there for 4.5 months, I realized it was probably not ideal for me to live there, and just because I could see the path of various musicians there, and I could see, you know, like you look at like bands like Coldplay, and it's like, who gives a fuck about Coldplay anymore? You know what I mean? Like their career lasted like 4 years, and you know, that's kind of the lifespan. At least at the time, that was the lifespan of a music career out in London, or at least the way I saw it, or the way I interpreted it. And I just didn't want that. I wanted to make sure I could do the thing I wanted to do musically, and just, for me, music is a life thing. It's something that I want to do for the rest of my life, and London wasn't the place for that. So at a certain point, I decided to go back to Canada, come back to Calgary, and super interesting too, because that period of time just before I came back to Canada, if I'm not mistaken, Nine Inch Nails were supposed to have a concert there, and that was the that was the concert. I do believe that Trent OD'd on heroin and wasn't able to perform that concert. If I'm not mistaken, that was the point in time. But the thing was is that I was tempted to go to that concert, and I'm like, I can't fucking do it this time. That would have probably been my first Nine Inch Nails live concert experience if I had gone. However, it didn't happen anyway, so I didn't miss anything, but it's just super interesting how that kind of worked out. And I do believe there was another friend I ran into there from Saskatoon, actually. I walked into a music record store, and I ran into another friend there from Saskatoon that I hadn't seen in a few years, and it was just weird running into these people that you would think, at least during the time that I was there, like summer season, tourist season, there's like between 14 and 16 million people in London. So, you know, you would think that you would never run into these people ever again, but you somehow do, and it's just weird shit would go on like that. Another interesting little thing, this is more of a personal thing, like there was a moment where I was like, you know what, I haven't heard anything from Nine Inch Nails in a while. I haven't heard anything since the Downward Spiral, and as I was walking to this record store, I'm like, I wonder when they're going to put something out next. And of course, I go into this record store, I'm looking through the CDs and stuff, and I look to the right, and on the shelf right next to me is this, I can't remember which, it's that one with the feathery flower thing on it, the Nine Inch Nails. I can't remember what it's called, but I have it in storage somewhere, but it was sitting there. I'm like, what the fuck? I had never seen it. I'm like, is this something, what the fuck is this? So of course I purchase it and bring it back to, I think I had a CD player at that point as well. I think I purchased a CD player. Of course I listened to it. I'm like, holy fuck, this is new shit that I've not heard. And then it was a short while later, I can't remember how long after that, that I of course find the Fragile album, and I'm like, holy fuck, like just weird shit like that's kind of always happened to me though, like when I start thinking about things like that, where it's like, I haven't heard anything from Finger 11 in years, and then of course a week or two later Finger 11 releases a fucking album, and then it's like, oh cool, and then of course I'll forget about them, and then in the next 10 years I'll be thinking about them again. I'm like, hey, I wonder if they're gonna release an album. I'm like, what? It's been a while since they've released something, and at this point, I already know when I start thinking about them, it's like they're gonna release something. I know they're gonna release something. Just weird shit like that happens to me. But yeah, what else is gone? What else went on in London? There's all kinds of stories, like lots of wandering around, lots of seeing different things, lots of crazy adventures. There was one time that we came home after a drunken night and then get up in the morning and we decided we're going to go to central London, and my best friend and I are hungover, and we get some photos with the bobbies and stuff like that, and then we head home, and when we get into the living room area, we find out that the back door to the house is open, and we can hear this like scratching, scurrying around, and we're like, oh dude, there's rats in the house. So of course we open the cupboard and one rat scurries out, and then my best friend are like, wait, we have this hamster ball, let's try to get this rat into the hamster ball and just see what happens. So what we do is we kind of keep it at bay, and then we create this little labyrinth for it to go through, and then eventually we got it into this. We didn't touch the thing, but we got it into this hamster ball, and of course, we get it into the hamster ball. It rolls around for a bit, and then of course, eventually, we release it out of the hamster ball and it takes off into the yard. I think we traumatized that rat. I'm not sure what else. We did lots of clubbing, lots of going out and doing things, lots of crazy adventures. Yeah. Can't remember what else. I think there was another time I saw another Inertia performance, but I can't remember who else was playing that night. But yeah, there were some other things too. Like you would go into like Camden to get this. You would have, in order to get into this club, you needed to, for cheaper, you needed to pay for this flyer from this dude, and the dude would charge you £2 for the flyer, but to get into the club it was literally like £4. So you would pay £2 for the flyer, and then you would pay £2 at the door, and it was a little ridiculous how they had that system running. But there was another weird shit that went on. I won't get into all the stories, but that was kind of my time in London, and I was just really checking out the music scene, the goth industrial scene. It was really amazing to see kind of where goth started and where industrial kind of started too, and just seeing all these legendary venues and being in them and dancing in them, and just meeting all kinds of people, and being young and getting crazy, and that was kind of my time in London. And I basically spent 4.5 months there, and then I came back in, I think in November of 99, I do believe. I left in July 99 and came back in November 99, halfway through November, and that was it. And that was kind of my London thing. And then of course I get back to Canada, and my parents I get back to Canada, and I stay with some of my friends in Canada, in Calgary, and that is another phase and era of Twitch, but I will get into that in another video. This video is super fucking long, but I hope you enjoyed it, and Hope you enjoyed the stories. I may tell some more stories from this time period in a future video, but I felt this next piece of the Twitch origin story was important because it determined for me that I knew at that point what I wanted to do musically, and I knew that I wasn't going to wait around for labels to, pick me up and, do whatever they're going to do. At that point I decided that I would sort of start my own label. I kind of already did when I did that first Twitch release, but that was kind of when I was like, okay, I'm going to promote myself, I'm going to do this myself, and that's kind of how that all came about, and that is the London story for Twitch. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you feel it has value, if you feel you want to share our story about our London months, definitely share this. If you have any comments or questions regarding this time period, I'm definitely down for answering them. Of course, this was quite a long time ago, so I'll try to answer those questions to the best of my ability. And if you feel this channel has value, please hit that subscribe button to be notified when the next video comes out. So see you in the next video. Fuck yeah.